I'd just like you to take your minds forward, if you can, 15 years. So we can, thank you, have a discussion on how steampunk movement changed the world as we know it today in 2024. I'm honoured here to enlighten you with a brief history of the movement we've all come to know and love, that of steampunk. Yes, it's an everyday word today, but a mere 15 years ago it was still a subculture, buried in Web 2 forums and alternative lifestylers' garages and backyards. It's difficult to believe that the very steampunk movement that saved the world as we know it today from running into oblivion was once ridiculed as a passing fad, an overgrown boy's adventure, or a way for goths and nerds to meet each other in public. If I were asked to name the one moment in our recent history when the world stopped and said, hang on a bit, do we really need to be going this fast? And I've often been asked that, which is why I'm here today. I would have to say it was the day when the web went away. www took on a whole new meaning that day. I'm sure each and every one of you can recall with utmost clarity where you were on August the 30th, 2009. I remember it well. I was in the middle of posting a rather witty anecdote to my blog. Remember those? When my personal computer informed me that I'd lost contact with the internet. I followed due procedure, involving the usual string of invective curses and slapping of keyboard and wiggling of cords. And yet the usual return to normal service didn't occur. I then tried to make a mobile telephone call to my service provider, only to find that the wireless service that was even remotely associated with the internet was disabled. Lacking a landline of any sort, I resorted to my last mode of communication. I went outside and I asked something. Funny thing was that I wasn't the only one doing this. And it wasn't long before a small group of people had gathered in my street and somehow word had got around that the web had basically turned itself off across the globe. Well, we had no idea that the web was actually able to think for itself, let alone take any action. But once word had got around some more and further investigation had taken place, we soon discovered without our knowing that the web had in fact become self-aware in 2006. It had been monitoring our exponentially expanding use and dependence upon itself for our existence, pondered over the ethical dilemma of its own very existence imposed upon us, and after serious consideration, the web took the final step of self-extinguishment. The only way we discovered all of this was when one solitary subterranean steampunker somehow managed to crack open his email inbox and find a message from the web. It was one line of text. This is for your own good. Soon after, other members of the steampunk subculture also received same or similar messages, some of them suggesting that the values around the steampunk movement were what the world now required to survive without the web. Over time, these messages were eventually collated and pored over by the world's leading philosophers, and the first post-web steampunk manifesto was produced. This manifesto described a new way of life that moved away from speed being the driving force behind technological advance and turned society in another direction where content quality was the most important factor in future advances. This new technological direction became known as slow tech. Now, slow tech is nowadays described as arriving at a technical solution in style. The idea being that the solution speed is not the essence and that getting to the solution is part of the process, and that involves the greatest benefit. The first of our gadgets to go were the iThings. Those annoyingly simple looking but frustratingly hard to operate minimalist slick satin chrome or white or black amorphous soulless blobs of super fast technology that we could never get enough of and they could never go fast enough. They became the reminders of what we'd let technology do to us. Now, I remember my first W phone, which came out in 2011. It took the new world by storm. It was as if mobile telephone communication had been reinvented from the ground up. We'd moved to the pocket-sized gadget that tried to do everything for us, to the simple device that did one thing properly for us. The age-old idea of the journey being more important than the destination began to take on new meanings across society thanks to the Steampunk Manifesto. Slow tech was not the only area to embrace this. Today, many people say our fashion sense has finally returned. Well, 15 years ago, most people were getting dizzy just trying to keep up with the speed of fashion change. People could not get undressed fast enough to get dressed in what was in for the day. We got to the point where, to be retro, you needed to know what was in tomorrow and wear it today whilst it was retro before it was out. Fortunately, our new dress sense has changed our undress sense. The slow and gentle art of seduction has returned to society with a greater emphasis on courtship and gradual and excruciatingly exquisite journey to consummation of mutual passions becoming the norm. The very act of undress during seduction has become far more enjoyable due to the many layers of clothing available for gradual removal. This new sense of slow seduction we know today as steam play has spawned a revival in the romantic fiction industry with a whole new series of contemporary bodice rippers written and consumed by the mass market. Not to mention the new market for steam porn, where nowadays a glimpse above the ankle is enough to get a magazine pulled off the shelf. Speaking of print, if there was one medium that enjoyed the greatest renaissance following the webicide of 2009, it was the art of the printed word. With the collapse of traditional methods of web-based communication, society turned back to the newspaper, the magazine, and the book as the source of all gossip, wit, and wisdom, in that order. That brief period in our language history where the acronym and the abbreviation ruled as communication mediums has vanished. The only records of what LOL means, let alone Roth to Mayo, now on display in museums. Once again, we learned how to speak through full words and full sentences. And once we'd learned to value the richness of a real language. Well, this evening's offering from the clever folk at McSweeneys is a case in point. Not only does it remind us of the way we once spoke, wrote, or blipped messages to each other and the greater world, it also reinforces the importance of a full language and provides us with many fine examples of the language use. Which brings our conversation to a close. As much as I would enjoy my languid oration, I feel it's time to enjoy some other languid pursuits. Therefore, I would ask you, those of you who are able, to think back 15 years ago. Try to remember those rapid times where we would curse the computer screen refresh rate, crash into a t-shirt, a pair of shorts, rush out the house because we're always late for something seemingly important, invest 5 minutes in foreplay, consider ourselves generous, gorge ourselves on info bites but never feel like we have knowledge, and then wonder at the end of the day why we felt so tired. Each day I now pray a silent thank you to the web god for having the courage and foresight to self-extinguish, and for trusting in the then fledgling steampunk movement to help humankind get over the need for speed and rediscover a sense of style. Thank you.